A long time ago, long before our world looked the way it does now, in ancient Athens, there was a ship. It rested in the harbor like a monument, its sails folded, its timbers darkened by years of salt and storm. This was not just any vessel. The Athenians believed it was the ship, Theseus' ship, the one that carried their hero home after his battles. Generations came and went, and the ship remained. Children grew up hearing its story. Elders told tales of the day it first returned from the sea. To walk past it was to brush against history, to feel pride in wood and rope that had touched the edge of legend. The Athenians could not bear the thought of losing it. But time is a patient thief. Salt water ate into the planks, the sun cracked the beams, ropes stiffened and tore with each winter storm. At first, it was a simple repair, single board replaced, a rope spliced, a nail hammered into rotting wood. But as years passed, repairs became replacements. The ship was never left to die. Piece by piece, it was renewed. A new plank where the old one had crumbled, a stronger mast when the winds snapped the last, snails that gleamed where rust had eaten through the iron. Slowly, quietly, the original pieces vanished, carried away to be discarded or stored. Yet the vessel stood proud in the harbor, still called Theseus' ship. Imagine walking there at dawn. The harbor is alive with noise, the cry of gulls, the creak of rigging, the shuffle of feet on the stone docks. Fishermen haul in nets dripping with silver scales. Children chase one another past amphorae stacked high. And there, towering above it all, stands the ship. Its wood is new, its sails bright, but the people point to it with reverence and whisper, "That is the ship of Theseus." But the story has another turn. Some say the old planks, the worn ropes, the rusted nails were never truly lost. They were gathered carefully and stored away. And over time, a craftsman began to reassemble them. One board laid against another, one mast lifted into place, until at last a second ship stood complete. Now Athens had two. One, the vessel renewed plank by plank, never ceasing its place in the harbor. The other, made entirely of the original materials, restored to what it once had been. And the question arose, sharp as a blade, which one is the real ship of Theseus? The one that never left its post, or the one that carried the weight of history in its very wood? This is the paradox. At first, it seems like a puzzle about timber and rope. But linger on it, and you begin to feel its shadow falling closer, whispering into your own life. Because the riddle was never just about a ship. It was always about us. About what makes something or someone truly the same, even when everything has changed. And that is where the story opens. Science tells us something strange, almost unsettling. The body you wake up in every morning is not the same body you once had. Your skin is constantly peeling, renewing. Your blood, the river inside you, is replaced every few months. Even your bones, so solid, so heavy, are quietly dissolving and rebuilding, grain by grain. 10 years from now, almost nothing of your physical body will be made of the same matter you carry today. And then there is the brain, the place we imagine ourselves to live. It is not a frozen sculpture. It is more like a city at night, streets lit up, others going dark, new roads being built while old ones crumble. Every thought you have, every memory you recall, every lesson you learn reshapes that city. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity, but to you it feels like change, like growth, like forgetting and beginning again. So, if the body is constantly remade and the brain constantly rewired, what exactly is it that stays the same? What allows you to look at an old photograph and say without hesitation, "That's me"? Some philosophers, like John Locke, believed memory is the answer, that identity lives in the continuity of recollection. As long as you can remember being the person you were yesterday, you are the same person today. But memory is fragile. Psychologists now know it is not a recording, but a rehearsal. Each time you remember, you change the story a little. Each time you tell it, you carve a new version. What then happens to the you that lived through the first version? Does that self vanish as memory rewrites itself? And here, spiritual traditions enter the conversation with a different voice. Buddhism speaks of anatta, the doctrine of no fixed self, the idea that the I is not a solid core but a flow of processes, like a flame that is real but never the same twice. In contrast, the Stoics imagined something deeper. Marcus Aurelius wrote that while everything around us changes, We are a rational soul carrying a body, a fragment of the universal order itself. These views clash and overlap, but both circle around the same question. If all else is in flux, is there something untouched that endures? Art has been asking the same question for centuries. In Blade Runner, the replicants wonder if they are real because their memories were implanted. In The Prestige, identities split and dissolve until even the audience doesn't know who the real magician is. These are not just stories, they are mirrors. They ask us whether we are the sum of our memories, the pattern of our actions, or something that exists beyond them. And maybe this is why the paradox unsettles us so much. Because deep down, you know your body has changed. You know your mind has shifted. And yet, you feel a silent thread running through it all. Something that whispers, I am still here. Is it the soul? Is it just continuity? Or is it both matter and mystery, endlessly remade, yet somehow unbroken? There's a part of us that longs for something unshakable. We like to believe there is an essence inside, a solid core that never changes, no matter what happens around us. It feels comforting to imagine that through all the storms, there is a piece of the self that stands untouched, like the keel of a ship that holds it steady in the water. But then life interrupts. You fall in love, and everything about you is rearranged. You lose someone you thought you couldn't live without, and suddenly you are not the same person you were before the grief. You make choices, big or small, and they bend you in directions you never expected. If there is a permanent core inside, why does it feel like every experience redraws the map of who you are? Philosophers have wrestled with this tension for centuries. The ancient Greeks leaned toward the idea of an essence, something fixed. Heraclitus, however, rebelled. He said everything flows, that you can never step into the same river twice. And if that's true of rivers, why not of us? Each moment carves a new version of who we are, even as we insist we are the same person as yesterday. Psychology supports this restless flow. Think about memory again. Every time you recall the past, you are not pulling a photograph from an archive, you are repainting it. Two siblings can remember the same childhood event completely differently. Which memory is true? Both and neither. Identity seems to be less like a stone carved once, and more like a story told many times, each retelling a little different. Spiritual traditions echo this too. Buddhism teaches that the self is not a fixed thing, but a stream of sensations. Thoughts and feelings appearing and disappearing like clouds across the sky. The Stoics, on the other hand, believed there was something deeper reason. Virtue, a spark of universal order that gave the self stability amid change. And perhaps both are right. Perhaps identity is not one or the other, but a dance between flow and foundation. You can even see this dance in art, in Virginia Woolf's Orlando. The main character lives for centuries, changing genders, changing roles, changing selves, yet remaining somehow recognizably Orlando. In Kafka's Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa wakes up as a giant insect, yet clings desperately to the thought that he is still himself. Stories like these whisper to us what philosophy cannot settle, that the self may be both essence and change, fixed and fluid, depending on how you look. So which is its essence or flow? Maybe the better question is, which story helps you live? Because when you're anchored in pain, it can be freeing to remember that identity flows, that you can change, grow, and outlive the storm. And when you feel lost, it can be grounding to believe there is a core inside you, steady and bright, that no change can touch. Perhaps the paradox isn't here to be solved. Perhaps it's here to give us permission to be both. Every ship has a secret. It isn't the sails that catch the wind, nor the planks that make its body. It is the keel, the spine running deep beneath the waterline. You never see it, but it is what keeps the vessel from tipping, what allows it to cut through waves without collapsing into chaos. A ship without a keel is not a ship, it is driftwood. So if we are the ship of Theseus, constantly renewed and rebuilt, what is our keel? What holds us steady when everything else in us changes? Think of a time in your life when the surface shifted completely. Perhaps you moved to a new city, lost a job, fell in love, or said goodbye to someone you thought you could never live without. The external planks of your life were torn away, replaced with strange new ones. And yet, through it all, something inside whispered, I must keep going. That hidden spine, that unspoken structure, is your keel. Philosophers have given many names to it. For Aristotle, it was virtue, habits of courage, temperance, and justice that ground a person regardless of circumstance. For the Stoics, it was reason aligned with nature, the inner fortress Marcus Aurelius spoke of when he wrote, "Nothing can touch the soul unless it consents." In the East, sages described it as dharma, a path of truth and duty that, like a keel, cannot be abandoned without capsizing into meaninglessness. Psychology gives us another language. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the concentration camps, wrote in Man's Search for Meaning that those who endured suffering were the ones who clung to a sense of purpose. He said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. That why is nothing less than a keel. It doesn't erase the storm, but it allows you to pass through it upright." Even neuroscience hints at this invisible spine. The brain, though flexible, operates with deep patterns, values, and emotional anchors that shape every choice. Call it character, call it moral compass, call it story, beneath the flux of thought. There are grooves worn so deeply they guide the entire vessel. And art, as always, reflects the truth back to us. In Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus is battered by waves, stripped of his men, lost on foreign shores. Yet what carries him home is not the planks of his ship. Those are destroyed again and again, but his unyielding longing for Ithaca, for his wife Penelope, for the essence of who he is. That longing is his keel. Without it, the hero is just another wanderer swallowed by the sea. So what about you? What is the unseen spine that keeps you from capsizing? Is it love, your devotion to a child, a partner, a friend? Is it faith, your trust in something larger than yourself? Is it an ideal, a principle, a line you refuse to cross? Or is it simply the stubborn spark inside you that says, no matter how many times I am broken, I will rise again? Because life will test it. Storms will strip away your sails, waves will smash against your hull, time will replace your planks one by one, but if your keel remains, you will not sink. Perhaps that is the true secret of Theseus' ship. Not the wood, not the nails, not the ropes, but the spine beneath the thing unseen, yet indispensable. And perhaps that is the secret of you as well. You are not your changing parts. You are the keel that holds them together. Stand in front of a mirror, look into your own eyes. Who is staring back at you? You might say it's me, but pause for a moment. What do you really mean by me? The body? The memories? The voice inside your head? Or something deeper you can't quite touch? Neuroscience whispers a disturbing truth. The self you feel so strongly may be nothing more than a useful fiction. The brain stitches together countless processes, sensations, emotions, memories, and presents them as a seamless story. But behind the curtain, there is no single center, no permanent eye directing the play. Just neurons firing, patterns forming, the illusion of continuity. Philosophers have suspected this for centuries. David Hume claimed he could never find a stable self within only a bundle of perceptions constantly shifting. Buddhism said the same long before him, teaching anatta, the doctrine of no self, that what we call I is just a collection of changing elements, like waves on the surface of the sea. The wave looks solid, but it is nothing apart from the water beneath it. And yet, illusion does not mean worthless. A rainbow is an illusion light bending through droplets, but does that make it less beautiful? In fact, its beauty exists because it is fleeting. In the same way, the self may be a construction, but it is a construction that gives shape to love, grief, memory, and meaning. Think of stories. When you read a novel, you know the characters aren't real, and still, you cry for them, laugh with them, carry them in your heart. The self may work the same way, a character your brain writes, chapter after chapter, so you can make sense of the chaos of existence. Psychology even shows how fragile this illusion can be. People with amnesia, stripped of their past, still say, I am me. Split brain patients, whose hemispheres are severed, sometimes act as if two selves live inside one body. And in everyday life, your own sense of self shifts depending on where you are, who you're with, what mask you wear. Are all of these versions you? Or are they roles in a play without a true actor behind the stage? Art, too, wrestles with this mystery. In Fight Club, the narrator discovers the person he thought was his friend is just another part of himself. In Black Swan, Nina loses herself in the role she plays until the boundary between performer and character collapses. These stories unsettle us because they echo something we already fear, that the I we cling to is fragile, unstable, maybe even imaginary. But here's the paradox. Even if the self is an illusion, it is an illusion that matters. You wake each morning and carry the thread of yesterday's story into today. You dream of tomorrow as if you will be there to meet it. The illusion shapes your choices, your relationships, your search for meaning. Illusion or not, it is the vessel you sail. So is the self real. Maybe not in the way we imagine a solid, unchanging core, but perhaps it is real enough. Real as a flame, flickering yet luminous. Real as a story, fragile yet powerful. Real as a dream that guides the waking life. Look back into the mirror. The eyes staring at you are not the same as yesterday's. The story you tell yourself is already changing, and still you whisper, "This is me." Maybe that whisper is the illusion, or maybe it is the only truth we'll ever have. Look around you. Nothing is still. The air is moving even when you don't feel the wind. Your heart is beating even when you forget it's there. Trees stretch toward the sky in slow motion, leaves fall, soil shifts, stars burn and die in silence above you. Change is not an occasional visitor, is the law that rules everything. Heraclitus said it simply, you cannot step into the same river twice. The water that touched your skin a moment ago has already flowed downstream, replaced by new currents. The river is never the same, and neither are you. The cells in your body renew, the thoughts in your mind drift and reshape. The story of your life turns page by page. Change is not what happens to you, it is what you are. Science confirms what philosophy intuited. Entropy, the great law of thermodynamics, tells us everything tends toward disorder, transformation, decay. Stars collapse into black holes, galaxies collide, species evolve or vanish. Even mountains, those symbols of permanence, are slowly worn down grain by grain. Change is not the exception to the universe, it is its heartbeat. And yet, we resist it. We cling to what we know, to faces, to places, to versions of ourselves we secretly hope will never disappear. We take photographs, write diaries, build monuments, all attempts to freeze the moment, to defy the law of becoming. But the photographs fade, the ink dries, the monuments crumble. The only permanence is impermanence. Spiritual traditions remind us not to fight this truth, but to embrace it. Buddhism speaks of impermanence anicca, urging us to see that clinging to what changes only creates suffering. The Stoics echoed this, with Marcus Aurelius writing, "Observe always that everything is the result of change, and be accustomed to think that nothing nature loves so well as to change existing forms and to make new ones like them." For him, change was not the enemy, it was the rhythm of the cosmos, the very thing that makes renewal possible. Art, too, is haunted by this law. Think of Shakespeare's sonnets, where he writes of beauty fading and the desperate attempt to preserve it in verse. Or films like The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, where a man ages backward, reminding us that time spares no one, it simply rearranges its cruelty. Music does the same. Every note vanishes the moment it's played. And yet, without that vanishing, there could be no song at all. And in your own life, you've felt it. The friendship that defined you once, now a faded voice. The dream you once chased, now replaced by another. The pain you thought would never end, now just a scar you carry quietly. Each change, welcomed or not, has carved the person you are today. So why do we fear it so much? Perhaps because change reminds us we are not in control. That we, like the ship of Theseus, cannot hold on to a single version of ourselves forever. But maybe control was never the point. Maybe the point was to sail to let the winds of change carry us, even if we do not know the destination. Change is inescapable, but it is also the reason you can heal, the reason you can grow, the reason the universe can bloom into forms it has never known before. Without change, there would be no rivers, no stars, no music, no love. So the question is not whether change will come. It will. The real question is, will you resist it, clinging to the planks that are already rotting beneath your hands? Or will you let it carry you forward, trusting that the ship rebuilt is still yours to sail? Think back to a moment that altered you. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Maybe it was the first time someone told you they loved you. Maybe it was a conversation that broke your trust. Maybe it was just a quiet morning, watching the sunrise, realizing that life would never look the same again. These moments don't pass through us like water through glass. They leave traces. They shape the vessel. And in a very real sense, they create someone new. Psychology suggests that we are not a single continuous self, but a collection of versions, each born out of change. Every time you learn, every time you suffer, every time you make a choice, the brain rewires. The old pathways weaken, new ones strengthen, and the you that emerges is not the same as the one before. It's not just growth, it's transformation. Philosophers have seen this too. Kierkegaard wrote that we become ourselves not by holding still, but by choosing again and again who we will be. Nietzsche spoke of the self as something to be overcome, an endless becoming rather than a finished being. And even the Stoics, who valued constancy, saw change as the workshop of virtue. You are tested, bent, broken, and reformed, and in that process, a new character takes shape. But if every change creates a new you, what happens to all the earlier versions? Do they vanish like shadows at dusk? Or do they remain alive inside you like echoes in a vast canyon? Memory keeps them close, even as time moves forward. The child you once were, the teenager full of fire, the adult carrying burdens, none of them exist in flesh anymore. And yet they all walk with you. You are not only who you are now, but also who you have been. Art reveals this layering of selves beautifully. In Orlando by Virginia Woolf, the protagonist lives for centuries, shifting identities, even changing gender, yet remaining recognizably the same person. In film, Boyhood traces 12 years of a boy's life, showing how each version of him is both gone and present. Each change carving a new identity while somehow preserving a thread of continuity. These works remind us that the self is not a snapshot, but a collage, a living mosaic made of countless former selves. And perhaps you've felt this in your own life. There are days you wake up and feel like a stranger to the person you used to be. A song you loved no longer stirs you. A belief you once defended now feels hollow. Even your own handwriting from years ago can look like the work of someone else. And maybe it is. Maybe that person is gone, and you are their continuation. But here's the paradox. If every change creates a new you, then the self is not a single entity at all, is a story told in chapters. Each chapter is complete in itself, but none of them are the whole book. You are both the author and the character, constantly rewriting and being rewritten. So does every change create a new you? Yes, but not in the way that erases the old. Each new self carries the ghosts of the earlier ones. They do not vanish. They become foundations, whispers, layers beneath your current skin. And perhaps that is why you can look back at all those different versions and still say, with some strange certainty, that was me. Every change creates a new you. But every new you is also a vessel carrying the memory of the ones before. Close your eyes for a moment and ask yourself, what is the one thing that makes you you? Is it your body, carrying you from place to place? Is it your memories, the fragile photographs in your mind? Is it your voice, your laughter, the way you love? Or is it something deeper, something you can't quite name? Science gives one answer. It points to the body, to the neurons firing in your brain, to the patterns of thought and behavior that make you recognizable. From this view, you are the sum of your biology, a complex arrangement of matter and electricity. If the arrangement holds, you continue. If it changes, so do you. Philosophy gives another answer. John Locke said identity comes from memory. If you can remember being the same person, then you are. But David Hume disagreed, saying he could never find a stable self inside, only a bundle of perceptions constantly changing. Heraclitus echoed that centuries earlier, everything flows, including you. Spiritual traditions offer yet another. They speak of a soul, a witness beyond change. The Buddhists say the self is an illusion, but awareness, the open space in which experience arises, remains. The Stoics believed the essence of you was your reason, your alignment with nature, your moral core. Different paths, but all searching for the same invisible thread. And then there is art, which has always wrestled with this question in ways logic cannot. In Blade Runner 2049, the replicant K asks whether his memories make him real. In Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, lovers erase their memories, only to find themselves drawn back together, as if love itself is the true identity. In literature, Dostoevsky's characters fracture into multiple selves, each part fighting to be the real one. Art doesn't solve the riddle, embodies it. But perhaps the best place to look is not in philosophy or science, but in your own life. Think of all the times you've changed. You are not the child who once feared the dark. You are not the teenager who dreamed in reckless colors. You are not the person who made that mistake you still regret. And yet, you carry them all. They live in you, like voices in a choir. So what truly makes you you? Maybe it isn't a single part, a single memory, or a single essence. Maybe it is the thread that runs through all of them, the way your story weaves the old selves into the new. You are not a fixed point. You are not a single answer. You are a pattern in motion, a flame that keeps its shape even as the fire consumes new fuel. And maybe, just maybe, that's the beauty of it. You don't have to solve the paradox. You don't have to pin yourself down to one definition. You are allowed to be many things, to grow, to change, to become. The ship of Theseus keeps sailing not because its parts never change, but because the journey never stops. Look in the mirror once more. The face has changed. The story has changed. But the gaze that searches, questions, wonders, that has always been yours. And perhaps that is what truly makes you, you. Stand before a mirror. Not in a rush, not fixing your hair, not adjusting your clothes. Just stand there, in the quiet. At first you see the surface. Eyes, skin, lines that weren't there before. You recognize the face instantly. It's yours. But stay a little longer, and the recognition begins to blur. You notice how strange it is to see yourself the way others do. The slight tilt of your head, the way your mouth rests when you are not smiling, the distance in your eyes. You wonder, is this how I look when I laugh? When I'm angry? When I'm lost in thought? The mirror is not just glass. It is a stage where you meet yourself as both actor and audience. Philosophers have long used this stage. Lacan spoke of the mirror stage, when a child first recognizes themselves in a reflection and says, "That is me." But what they see is not the whole truth. It is an image, an illusion of wholeness. From the very beginning, the self is built not just from what we are, but from how we appear. The mirror teaches us to be both subject and object, to live as the one who acts and the one who watches. And think of how many times you've done this in your own life. Before an important meeting, you catch your reflection and whisper courage into it. Before a heartbreak, you look at your face and wonder if the other person still sees beauty there. After years have passed, you catch yourself in glass and realize you've become someone your younger self would not even recognize. The mirror tells the truth, but never the whole truth. Art has explored this endlessly. In Black Swan, Nina stares into mirrors until she can no longer tell where she ends and her reflection begins. In Alice Through the Looking Glass, the mirror is not just reflection, but a doorway into another world. In poetry, Sylvia Plath called the mirror a little god, faithful, unmisted by love or dislike. Mirrors do not flatter or lie. They simply show. But what they show is never simple. Because when you face yourself in the mirror, you face every version of you that has ever lived. The child's curiosity, the teenager's fire, the adult's scars. All of them flicker across the surface, even if only for a moment. And in that instant, you realize you are not just one person, but a collection of selves, carried forward in a single body. But here is the paradox. The mirror cannot show what matters most. It cannot reveal the voice that rises when you speak the truth. It cannot reflect the kindness you offered in silence, or the courage you found when no one was watching. It cannot show the thread that holds all yourselves together. The mirror is a stage, but the play is larger than what glass can capture. So, when you look into your own eyes and whisper, "That's me," what are you really seeing? The surface, yes. The story so far, yes. But also the mystery of something that no reflection can hold. Perhaps the ship of Theseus lives in every mirror. The face you see is not the same as yesterday's, yet it carries yesterday's story. The actor has changed, but the role continues. And maybe that's the truest reflection, not of a fixed self, but of a self forever becoming. The ship of Theseus begins as a simple riddle about wood and rope. But like all great paradoxes, it does not stay small. It expands, rippling outward, until it reflects not just identity, but the universe itself. Because when you look closely, the universe is playing the same game as the ship. Stars are born, burn, collapse, and scatter their ashes into space. From those ashes, new stars ignite. Galaxies spin, collide, and merge into new forms. Even the universe itself may be constantly remade, expanding, shifting, reshaping its own laws. And yet, we call it by a single name, the cosmos. Physics tells us matter and energy are never lost, only transformed. What was once the core of a star now flows through your bloodstream as iron. The oxygen you breathe was born in an ancient explosion billions of years ago. You are not separate from the universe, you are its rebuilt ship. Sailing under a name it has never stopped carrying, existence. Philosophers sensed this long before science confirmed it. Heraclitus spoke of the eternal fire, always consuming, always renewing. The Stoics believed we were fragments of the Logos, sparks of a rational order woven into the fabric of nature. In Eastern traditions, the same truth takes other names: the Tao, the eternal flow; Brahman, the unchanging ground of all change. Different languages, same recognition that the universe is not fixed, but alive, a process, a paradox of permanence through transformation. And art has always tried to mirror this mystery. Van Gogh painted the night sky not as still points of light, but as a storm of swirling stars, cosmic motion caught on canvas. Poets like Rilke whispered that life is not about holding on, but about being transformed. Even cinema echoes the theme. In 2001, A Space Odyssey, the astronaut passes through the unknown and is reborn as the Star Child, a symbol of endless renewal. So, what does the ship of Theseus really tell us? That identity is not about clinging to one version of yourself or one form of the universe. It is about the continuity of the journey, the thread that runs through every change. The ship sails on, plank by plank, storm by storm. The cosmos expands, star by star, collapse by collapse. You live moment by moment, self by self. And maybe that's the final secret. You are not separate from the paradox. You are the paradox. You are matter constantly replaced, yet a story that continues. You are awareness constantly shifting, yet a thread that remains. You are the universe asking itself, am I still the same when everything inside me has changed? The ship of Theseus is not just a story about a vessel in an ancient harbor. It is the mirror in which the universe sees itself. And in that reflection, you see your own face, changing, fleeting, mysterious, and yet undeniably yours.